Hey, yo, everybody's dealing with something, man. Whether it's personally, in the community, around the world, something's always popping off. But there's this one spot I heard about, man, this podcast, man. I heard they keep it 100. Let me turn this on to see if I can find it.
Moderator. Okay.
That's it, right here, son. That's what I was telling you about.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Chosen Words, and welcome to the kickoff initial episode of the Just Say It podcast. As promised, we're going to kick things off with a bang for you right here today. We're pulling back the curtain on this R. Kelly situation. I have a few guests in studio with me today as we are going to dive in depth on this subject. We're going to take it from A to Z. We're going to go back to the beginning, see how these things unfolded, see how it was overlooked, and see how things got to where they are today. We're also going to talk about some ways that we can see or identify this type of individual so that the women, our mothers, our sisters, our aunts, our grandmothers, whomever it may be, so that we can identify this, to begin to identify them early so that we can cut these things off before they escalate to a point to where this whole situation is. So again, my name is Chosen Words. I thank you for liking, following, and sharing the broadcast with a family member or friend. Live in studio with me today, I have two special guests. I have Dardy. Dardy, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Hey, guys.
All right, and then we also have my brother Amori. Amori, how's it going?
Awesome.
All right, so we're talking about this R. Kelly situation, which we know is a hot topic right now going on, in the nation, particularly in the black community, because it appears it's been overlooked for so long now. Dardy, what do you think about this initially, before we get too far into it?
Initially, I think
It's a lot, right?
it is a lot. It's crazy. Initially, this is what I think is crazy. From the beginning, we all knew. Initially.
So what about you, Mark? What you think? What do you think about your initial reaction to everything that's kind of unfolded?
One of my same frame of thoughts is the timeline. Just like within our families, we know that certain situations or people like this exist, but why is now the opportune time that everything is unfolding the way that it has? Because there hasn't been anything really new that was presented. I don't know, I didn't watch the Lifetime special, so I'm not privy to all of those interviews, but we pretty much know everything, like Dardy said, that we've known for years, but we still supported this man. So why now?
So let's go back to the beginning. Now, of course, everything there's not been any convictions or anything of that nature as of yet. So as of right now, we're talking about, as Mr. Kelly himself says, allegations. So let's go back to the beginning, and we all know that this supposedly began with Aaliyah. So, or as we were talking about, a little bit off set. It may even predate Aaliyah. We don't know. But we know that he jumped onto the scene with, Public Announcement. The first album, R. Kelly and Public Announcement. Hey, Mr. DJ, we all heard it. He blew up, and then, Public Announcement kind of disappeared. I kind of wonder what happened to them too. But
Now, for reference points, everybody doesn't know of these groups that he's referring to because he does have a little bit more age on some of the newer fans. I know we're there.
Listen,
but everybody may not be
just
aware.
do your history, do your research. R. Kelly was with Public Announcement. It was R. Kelly and Public Announcement when he first jumped onto the music scene. So age has nothing to do with it. Good music is good music. You know what I mean? So it's all good. It's all good. So so he jumped onto the scene, and he was almost an instantaneous star.
Right.
That's true.
So when anyone who usually comes from the demographic, especially from our culture, when we get presented and these doors open and all of these opportunities arise, you know, temptation comes, and if we're not acclimated or accustomed to having money and fame and attention and access to things that we've never had before, you know, we're prone to, you know, get tied up in all of these things that go on, you know, in that arena. So, you know, Darty brought up something very, very interesting, and I know you may not have had an opportunity to see this, but you know, as we're talking about this today, you know, we're going to really dig and get to the root of this issue. Now, again, everyone out there, this is our opinion. You have your own opinion, that's fine. I mean, we've done our due diligence and doing a little bit of digging before we just jumped on the air to start talking, you know, blasphemy or whatever you want to call it. But, you know, Darty, you did find a hidden gem, so to speak. And, you know, allegedly, we don't know if this did or did not occur, but, you know, his brother said that in an interview that, you know, he was, well, I'll let you share it.
Yeah. So I saw this video, his brother name is Kerry Kelly, of him explaining what happened to them when they were younger with their older sister, who he said was about 18 at the time, and it started with Kerry Kelly around 4. So believe R. Kelly is 4 years older than his younger brother. So, you know, it had to start with him as well at 4, if it started with his brother at 4. But he was just on there explaining how his sister used to molest them and how it was between him and Robert R. Kelly, where one person get to go outside with the older brother and one person have to stay back in the house. And that person staying back in the house had to do certain things with his sister, how he was explaining on the video.
Now the sister was older? Okay.
The sister is the oldest.
Okay.
So it's 4 of them. One brother in jail, you know, Kerry Kelly, Robert, and his older sister. But I forgot his sister's name.
Okay.
So when we look at this dynamic and how everything that is coming out into the public persona is unfolding, this started in his youth. And we all know, I mean, as kids, we all went through our own different intangibles and circumstances growing up. But, you know, a child is an innocent plate or innocent slate. You know, they can only do what they were taught. So now, again, we're not condoning anything that's been done to any of these young ladies. But in order to really get to the root of an issue or get to the root of a problem, you have to begin to identify, where did this all start? Because, you know, no child wakes up in the morning and just says, you know, hey, I'm going to begin to prey on the young ladies in their late teens. And, you know, when they become of age and, you know, they're going to become my sex slaves or, you know, my women or my whatever you want to call it. So if this did in fact happen with his sister, you know, fondling them, molesting them, taking advantage of them. And I even believe in part of the video it said, you know, that, you know, his sister was doing some of the same things to them that he's doing to these young ladies right now, right? Right,
like keeping them in the house, like can't talk and stuff like that. According to what he was stating on the video, is according to what R. Kelly allegedly is doing to the young ladies now.
So this is a learned behavior. Now, I studied some, you know, psychology and, you know, all that good stuff. But, you know, children can only do what they're taught, or they can only absorb what transpires in the atmosphere that, you know, they are raised in. So, you know, when we look at, you know, what his brother is saying is, hey, listen, this happened to us. You know, that and understanding this is a family member, so, you know, they're probably not wanting to come forward, or they're probably scared. So as a, you know, a young boy growing into a young man, and then now, you know, an adult and an older man, you know, this he's used to. This is his normal.
Right.
So, you know, now that, you know, people are, you know, coming out challenging this, well, no one ever challenged this from the time he was, you know, knee high to a grasshopper. So this is his normal. You know, who's going to, well, not that who's going to necessarily stop him now, but, you know, it's almost like breaking through a 10-foot concrete wall.
Right.
Because this is something that's solidified in his psyche now that, hey, you know what, this happened to me. nobody stopped it from happening to me. So this has to be right.
Right.
That's true.
And you know, it's crazy. You know, as we were watching the you know, the video, you know, Surviving R. Kelly, you know, his ex-wife came out and said, hey, you know, he writes about these things in his song. So, you know, that got me to thinking, okay, well, you know, I mean, we've all bought R. Kelly music. We've all listened to R. Kelly music. And he let's give the man his due credit. He's a musical genius, right? Now, the key is that we all know that some of the smartest people that have ever existed in the world, they've either been very good or they've been very bad. And there usually is no middle ground. In this case, unfortunately, it's on the worst side of the spectrum. So let's take a look into a little bit of his music. You know, when you know, I believe after the R. Kelly and Public Announcement album came out, you know, the next song that came out was Bump and Grind.
That pretty much said a lot. that type of music. Real quick before we go into that, one of the things that really that you said was I deem is very important. I was looking at an interview that Tyler Perry did with Oprah Winfrey, and he was speaking about the abuse that he received from his father, physical abuse, I believe it was. And one of the things that he said was breaking ground for him as far as getting through that and being able to still foster some type of a relationship with his father was understanding that his father had a story as well.
Right.
Just like he had his story of, you know, his backdrop of what he experienced through his father's upbringing, or, you know, through his personal upbringing and his encounters with his father. He said he was really able to kind of forgive and move past some things once he understood that, just like himself, his father had a backstory.
So
his father had things that happened to him, like you said, generational things. So not to say that forgives or excuses any type of, you know, ill behavior, but it's important, especially for the victims, I believe, in order to move forward, that they understand that, you know, that there is a backdrop, even to their oppressor, as far as what they experienced as victims.
Now, the Tyler Perry situation, and that's a very good point that you brought up. You have to come to a place of first acknowledging.
Right.
And I think that's where the issue is with this whole situation or circumstances, because this has been going on for so long now. You know, it's normal, and until there's, you know, it's almost like, you know, the AA. You know, they say the first step is to admit it. You know, if you can't admit it, then you don't acknowledge the problem. And if you don't acknowledge the problem in your mind or in your world and atmosphere, there is no problem.
Right.
So I think what you're saying is very key. And the first step in this is he has to come to a place of acknowledgement. And that's what his wife was saying, Dardy. You know, in the videos, hey, you know, Robert, you need to make reparations. You need to, you know, make amends with, you know, these women that you've done all these things to, that you know, you need to acknowledge what it is that you're doing. So, you know, at what point, and I'll take it a step further, right? Because in the Surviving R. Kelly video, we had one of his former employees come forward saying, you know, he had connections in the Chicago Police Department and the Atlanta Police Department and all of these police departments, where when the parents were trying to get, you know, I guess what they consider wellness checks to make sure their daughters were, you know, okay, you know, the police were tipping him off that, hey, the parents are calling, you know, to check on their daughters, and we're going to come by. That's a problem.
That is a problem.
And that's a big question mark. Like, why is stuff like that permitted in our society? And I won't even say if you have a certain level of affluence or status, but why would something like that be allowed or tolerated?
Money.
I think it goes deeper than money, though. You know, why would law enforcement make those types of exceptions, in this case for Mr. Robert Kelly, or whomever it may be, because we can name a lot of different people of different backgrounds and different colors that those exceptions get made. And I don't think that it's always just motivated by money. So that's
so you think that they're, well, now again, we're just hypothetically speaking here because we don't want to throw out any allegations. So what you're saying is there may be some potential benefit for those who are aiding.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Has to be.
So think about this, right? He's doing what he's doing. Parents are concerned. You have parents calling the police tipping him off or tipping his people off. Hey, they're coming. So he's evaded all forms of legal recourses right now.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take this a step further. What about those who are employed by him who know these things are going on?
Mm.
That I feel everybody enabled him. Like, he really don't think it's a problem, so how can he acknowledge it? Like, if in his psyche, how can he acknowledge something that he don't think is a problem?
Well, you're right. But if I'm with you and I see that you're doing these things, right? Whether I'm on your payroll or not, I have a cousin, I may have a sister, I have an aunt, you know, I may have female friends. We all have women as part of our lives in some capacity. So if I'm your employee and I see these things going on and what you're doing, now I'm aiding and abetting. So when the hammer falls down, does it just fall on Robert or does it fall on his entire crew?
It falls on his entire crew because they was going out getting the girls as well. So it falls on the entire crew. Like, everybody enabled this man. Everybody gave him what he wanted. If he allegedly wanted little girls, they was going to go out and get them.
Right.
So.
Because I think early in his career, and these were just, various videos and interviews that I saw on YouTube over the years, but I actually used to drive trucks in Chicago and in the south side of Chicago.
Used to go to the
So
high schools.
I've actually gone by the high school that I wasn't even aware at the time. He didn't even graduate from the school because of his academic issues or whatnot. But to know that he was still frequenting these high schools on his own.
Why did they stop?
It wasn't stopped at that point. I'm pretty sure that his status grew to a point that he wasn't able to just physically go and stand at the high school corners or bus stops anymore and recruit these girls. So someone, like you said, was having to do these things for him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's deeper than just the one man.
The system messed up. It's all messed up. Like, he going to the high school. Adults see him coming to the high school and getting teenagers. So nobody not gonna say anything.
And then even speaking to the fact of the parents, because that's what you hear and see pertaining to the Lifetime series. You have other celebrities going out and speaking. I believe Master P did a response, and he's like, "Yo, the parents. Okay, what responsibility lies on the parents if you know that this multimillionaire is courting? I can't even use courting as a proper word, but preying on your child, and there's incentive for you. Why would you not speak up? Why would you not blow the whistle a little bit harder than what was done, even if there were other systems in place, such as the police department and whatnot being involved?
Right. I don't care if it was my kid. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the police department would definitely be involved.
Right. We shooting up everything. You hear me? The parents would I feel like they wanted money. I literally feel like they wanted money.
Well, you brought up Master P, so let's hear what P had to say.
Lifetime just made a lot of money. Everybody knows Lifetime is. That's a reality show. 6 seasons, 6 episodes of that. Let's be real. Now, the truth, what I don't like, the parents, if you somebody daddy and you knocking on the door, pitching them when they got your daughter in there, y'all know I ain't gonna be on no reality show or Lifetime. I'm gonna be on CNN, straight up. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna get real. Think about it. I'm not about to play with nobody. I'm gonna burn it down. I'm gonna do something. So I'm telling y'all, that's what I don't like. This ain't your kid in there. My character gone. God know I believe, I trust all that, bro. But that'll be out the window. Nobody gonna.
So Master P is saying, listen, this is my shawty, you know what I mean? This is my seed.
For real.
That's in there. So, you know, I'm going to do what I got to do to get my kid back. And as a father, absolutely. Even as a mother, because mothers are nurturers and your fathers are protectors. So he's speaking from a protector standpoint. And even the father on that video, he was speaking from a protector standpoint. Now, here's the key with this. It is I guess the girl was Azriel, her parents. So her father and her mother would have taken the appropriate recourses in saying, hey, we sent your older sister. So they did attempt to put some form of accountability in place. Mm-hmm. But without neither of them knowing what they were really getting into.
I don't believe that they didn't know what they was getting into. I don't care if he got acquitted from all those charges. It was in the news, stated that R. Kelly was on this tape having sex with an underage girl. I seen that tape and it was him. And that was years ago. I'm not finna have my daughter going to a man that I know. I don't care if it was allegations or whatnot. I'm not, no, you can't go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think there's a certain luster as a parent that is attached with my daughter, and specifically because we're talking about women, mm-hmm. and a superstar. Mm-hmm. I think that we can easily draw the illustration that, you know, at those times, I don't care what monetary incentive there may be. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to intentionally place my daughter in harm's way. But we can look back through time, especially with the history of entertainers, where this is done very frequently. Mm-hmm. Look at Tina Turner, mm-hmm. and Ike Turner. Mm-hmm. You know, Anna Mae was a child, mm-hmm. when she bust onto the scene and was released from her mother to this man that she know, okay, has some predatory type issues. Mm-hmm. So I think that there was definitely, you know, more so of a personal incentive that trumped the welfare of my child in those cases where a woman is, or a family is willingly allowing their daughter. I don't care if it is with the big sister. If it ain't with the big shotgun, right. with me holding the big shotgun, my child ain't going.
Well, I'm with you now. I'm going to go on the other side of this. Because if we look at the dynamic from a lot of these young girls, and we don't know the financial status of any of these families, mm-hmm. but you know, let's presume mm-hmm. that, you know, they're the average family, okay. and your daughter or son, because again, this can go either way. This should be transparent. Has been approached by a megastar. Hey, your kid, your shorty, you know, your jit, whatever you want to call them, they got it. I want to work with them. That within itself is like, okay, you know what? This is going to transcend the entire dynamic of our family.
Right.
Financially, generationally, all the other little perks that come with that. So, as opposed to seeking out counsel to say what goes on, you know, with this process. Mm-hmm. You know, we were talking about earlier. This goes back to potentially Aaliyah, or it predates Aaliyah. And I'm sure it probably does, because you're talking about the high schools earlier. Mm-hmm. So if we know these things, and the possibility of essentially that carrot being dangled in front of, you know, mom, dad, auntie, uncle, grandma, grandpa, whomever it may be, to change the livelihood of the entire family, or the scope of the entire family, you know, that's something that may be a once-in-a-lifetime type entity. So I agree, you definitely have to do your due diligence in making sure that the appropriate measures are in place. Now, based on the show, mm-hmm. he told them everything they wanted to hear, mm-hmm. right? Yeah, you know, we're gonna. Now, I think where they went wrong is saying, hey, you know, when he supposedly informed them that the label's going to appoint someone to be with her as a guardian. Mm-hmm. all hands stop. No, I understand that. That's all cool, but my people finna be here. Right. I understand what you're saying. You know, we all operate by the method of trust but verify. I hear what you're saying, dog, but
that's my baby.
Yeah, I'm a little street too, and yeah, I don't just know you like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So mom's at the end of the she was like, hey, I don't, and I see you coming at your head. I don't been to jail before, and I ain't afraid to go back. But it's becoming now for these girls, in my own opinion, a little bit more dangerous, because now his avenues of income are drying up, because he really hasn't necessarily released a record in quite some time. A lot of your major streaming avenues and venues, Spotify, Apple, they're not heavily promoting him, and as they used to. So your income is dwindling. But you still have this stable of women and this lifestyle that you're trying to live. Now, unless you have a heck of a financial advisor that's keeping your money growing at, double digit, growing over double digit, percentages over the years, you're going to run into an issue eventually. So that's where it becomes dangerous for these girls, because now, as a one young girl from, I believe she was from Texas, stated, when she first ran into the first young lady who was in the TMZ video, she was there, she was, answering to his, every beckon and command. So what happens now when he can no longer supply what it takes to meet the needs of himself first? Because, at the end of the day, if the poop hit the fan, people gonna look at themselves first. They gonna let me take care of numero uno.
That's
and
right.
y'all get it how you get it,
Y'all
but
figure it out.
I got to make sure that this right here is taken care of. And not only that, what's gonna happen when they get older?
They gotta go through a lot of counseling.
Well, it's gonna be worse than that, because now what your life was is no more, and once it's gone, what do you do?
Because the money is gone, but all the remnants, the emotional problems, that's there.
Well, let's take it a step further than that. That's part of it when the money dries up. But let's talk about what happens before that, because these girls aren't getting younger.
Right.
So, okay, you don't meet the qualifications anymore, so now I have to make room for somebody else.
Yeah.
See, nobody's talking about that.
Because his appetite for
The certain body
demographic
type, right,
isn't changing that he wants. So, yeah.
So as they get older, he phases them out. Where do they go?
That's a good question.
What do they do? So we know that, it's going to take, it's probably going to take the rest of their life to recover. But what do they do when they're transitioned or phased out, so to speak? Out with the old, in with the new. We want, we as our pops say, we want the latest model. What do you do when the latest model comes in and now you're outdated? And now you're out here, you don't have the lifestyle and all these things that you're, and I don't even think there's really a lifestyle that they're accustomed to, because based on the one young lady who was actually in the home, they were worse than slaves, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right.
He's on the Lifetime series, they said that he kept them apart. They used to have to stomp the floor, ask to eat, knock on thing. If they not being obedient, he starved them for 3 days and stuff like that. My thing is, I don't understand how you can let somebody, I can't say that. I do understand how you could let somebody belittle you like that. I do. But that's just really crazy.
Well, having been in the military and served and actually, been deployed to Iraq, I was, I don't want to say fortunate, to witness different techniques as far as mental warfare that you would inflict upon, your adversary. And that's basically exactly what that is. It's a form of mental and emotional warfare that is hard to conceive if you haven't actually, been subjected to that.
Yeah, on the series, they did state that he will tear them down and then build them up. Tear them down and then build them up. So that is kind of.
So with that being said, who are you now looking to as the sole source of just your everyday motivation? The same person that's tearing you down is the same person that you're now expecting to be the one to build you up. So
Right.
now you're completely relying on that person, their tactics, and whatever it is that they're utilizing to keep you in that form of bondage. So I think it's very difficult to understand. And even how it affects, people later on in the generational chain. Something that's pretty personal and near and dear to me is my mother was subjected to, some physical abuse at a young age. And it was really difficult for me growing up because it wasn't explained to me. It wasn't, I wasn't made aware of it until there was, a fit of rage between myself and another family member who just opened up and just dumped the whole can of everything on my head. And I'm like, wait a minute. This same person was so instrumental in making me the man that I am today. And now all of a sudden you're telling me this. So from that moment on, I believe I was 12 or 13, it affected me severely. Not only my relationship with that individual who was the oppressor, but even with the relationship of other family members
Right.
who didn't open their mouth and say anything to me. So now as a grown man and a father of 3 daughters, I had to see my mother bouncing back and forth with the emotional and spiritual scars of what happened and still struggling to love this person who abused her. And now I'm having to deal with it in a different way.
Right.
By no means the same way that my mother is.
Right.
But now I'm struggling with loving a person who I did love at one time, but later on the crack was made in the foundation for hatred and, distension between me and this person. It's like, okay, now that affects me and my children and how I present my children to this individual, if I present my children to this individual. So it has lasting effects.
Well, you just touched on it though. And that goes right back to what I was saying. As these girls get older and they're looking to him and he's no longer existent or available or reachable, whatever the case may be. And now the new model is here. What do these girls do? What do these families do? Because at that point, they're not engaging them now. So, and I think in the one case of the one young lady, it's been 3 years. So this girl has grown and changed. A lot can happen in a month.
Right.
We're talking 3 years, and we don't know how long this is going to play out. But if this scenario does occur, and now she has to engage her family, let's say after 15, 20 years, she's almost she's in her late 30s, close to being in her 40s. How do you deal with that? Because you essentially, you don't know this person, right? It's almost like a, we call it an institutionalized mindset, where, you have someone who went to prison at a young age and they come out and they're still looking at the world the way it was, how at 15, 10, 5, however many years it was ago that they went in. Yeah. So from the parents' perspective, they're still looking at this as, this is my little 16, 17-year-old girl. Whereas, because you can only connect at the level that you really last engaged from most people's perspective. So when we look at it from that angle, should this play out, they're going to engage her like a teenager.
That's true.
Right.
And this is now a grown woman who's been through, based on what the other young lady said, who got out of the situation, who's being tortured, sexually, mentally, physically, emotionally, all of these things. So, how do you help someone recover that's been through all these things now for all of this time, and in your psyche, you're still thinking of them as my little girl?
Right.
How do you deal with that?
Counseling. I mean, it's going to have to go deeper in counseling. Even with the young lady, like you stated, she's older now. but she still can be stuck at her 17-year-old state in her mind. So now she's going to have to, even though you might not want to, you're going to have to get over that hump. You're going to have to go back and deal with the trauma. You're going to have to go back and you have to get some inner healing. You have to, because if you don't, you're going to be stuck at that mindset.
And I think it's such a complex way of dealing with it, because one, each person is different. Each person handles things differently. But not only are those things suppressed at that age, but they compound as time goes on. For example, if you get incarcerated and you go in, technology is at one point. Then when you come out, not only do you have to relearn, but you also have to play catch up.
Right.
So some of these women may have, had kids at this point. So now not only are they still little girls trapped inside of an adult body, but now they're responsible for fostering and nurturing other young women or young boys. And it's like at the same time of dealing with their issues, they're having these added responsibilities that have compounded. Life has changed. Society has changed. So now, even with the whole Me Too movement, okay, before there was no real platform or really way of coming out and expressing this stuff. You felt embarrassed. You didn't even want to talk to your own family members or whatnot. Now there are a lot of women who are gaining courage and strength from seeing this whole movement take place that are now able to step forward. So when I say like things compound and change as time goes on, the playing fields are changing so drastically as time continues to go on that people are finding new ways. Like there's new ways of getting at R. Kelly now. We haven't criminally been able to convict him, whoever the forces may be, but now they're finding ways to go at him economically, to hit his pockets. And, things that they're doing now wouldn't have been as effective if they were to do this a decade ago.
That's true.
So I think there's just so many different ways of dissecting it and trying to answer that question as to what do you do with these young ladies who are now older ladies now after they are phased out from that current situation.
So what really brought this entire thing further into the light was the Hollywood mogul, who was brought forth with all of his behind the scenes activities. So here's a question that I posed to you, and this is something that I was really pondering on. So who, with these young ladies having gone through what they've gone through, and with them having been really exposed to what they've been exposed to, some of the most powerful women, and think about this, right? When did all this happen?
Decades ago.
Well, it started happening decades ago, but really a lot of this hit the fan in my perspective along the timeline when Hugh Hefner died.
Okay.
Because all of this started unfolding around that time frame.
Okay.
So
I didn't draw that connection.
So
I didn't either.
Who are really the most powerful women in the world?
The women that are attached to the most powerful men in the world.
The Playboy models.
Okay.
Because essentially, you have these parties with all of these high influential people. Who knows what's going on in there, but at the same time, we know Toad, and that would be, Stormy Daniels, said, about, our commander-in-chief, all the mushrooms and all that, so I'll call him Toad. The Mario reference. Super Mario, we'll call him Toad, so we don't have to go all the way down that line. But
that King.
King Koopa. Yeah, King Koopa. We'll call him King Koopa. There you go. So King Koopa, Toad is, he's there. So if someone of his status and caliber is there, who else is there?
Right. And
not only is he there, but what is being overheard
and overlooked.
So to me, there's a lot of powerful women who know a lot of things that a lot of men are shaking in their boots over right now.
And can I don't want to get too far off topic, but I want us to venture to this as well, because I know a lot of people are making this a color motivated thing.
Come on. We were
one of
getting
the
into
things
that.
that you just said about the Hugh Hefner, obviously he's of a different pigment or melanation. But I don't believe that this issue is something that is just as prevalent as it is in our community or in our society. Traditionally, this was imposed on our society, not by people that look like us. So I think it would be very foolish to think that this is something that only heavily affects the black community. The situations of incest or molestation or, you know, any type of sexual perversion or even the capacity for the mental anguish and mental warfare. These were things I don't think that we just created on our own or imposed on our own society or communities.
Right.
So I hope we get to kind of venture off on that as well. But I just thought of that as soon as you said, you know, the Hugh Hefners of the world, the King Koopas of the world. This ain't something that just
we'll call him
us.
Toad.
Yeah.
Toad is. I can see the King Koopa with the little throw over. You know what I mean? We'll call him. We'll call him King Koopa Toad. You know that. Yeah, I mean, but, you know, I think about these things and I'm just like, wow, this is really interesting and amazing that it took, you know, one person to really fall for the entire movement to start, which, you know, nothing happens by circumstance or coincidence. But, you know, when all these things begin to unfold, you know, I look back at it and I'm like, wow, once, you know, this domino toppled, the other ripples started to occur. And it started with one of the big blocks in you know, as far as what transpired with the Hollywood mogul. But some of the most powerful women who know some of the most unknown things to the north or the common or the average ear were those playmates.
Sure.
Those Delilahs.
Yeah. So, you know, when the first block fell, it's, oh boy, it just got real. Am I next?
But who was really asking those questions? Am I next? Because I haven't seen a Lifetime special for Kevin Spacey. I haven't seen a Lifetime special for Harvey Weinstein. So I think the people that are really shaking in their boots right now are affluent people of color who have perpetrated these types of behaviors pretty boldly and blatantly because it was acceptable during that time frame, and now that it's no longer acceptable, it's like, wait a minute. So
do you think it as a race thing?
I think the disparity of how it's portrayed to society as a whole through the lens of social media, the news outlets, things of that nature, I think that they make it more nonchalantly about race, because you see the scrutiny that, and again, I'm not condoning any of these men or their behaviors, but you see the scrutiny that Bill Cosby came under. You see how they just put him
My TV did.
under the speed bumps, all of that. They just ran over him with tractor
no,
trailers.
with no
substantial
proof or
evidence.
Right. Now, we're not saying that he didn't do it.
Right.
I have a question. So, if we look at the Bill Cosby thing, thank you for bringing this up. So, you know, allegedly, you know, he was drugging these women back in the day, and they all to be of a different kind of race. And now, you know, Uncle Bill, he in prison, you know. So, what's the difference between R. Kelly and allegedly, you know, messing with the young ladies, and then Bill? Now, Bill in jail. Now, they only going off of he say, she say in Bill's case. It's no evidence. But the people of the other color get on there and say, you know, this is what happened, They found, you know, Uncle Bill guilty. So why is it that they not finding R. Kelly guilty?
You already said it. What demographic was Bill affecting?
The other.
What demographic was R. Kelly mainly affecting?
Us.
So if we look at it as a society, and I definitely don't mean to make this, you know, a race issue, because, you know, whether they were white, black, whatever color, you know, whatever they suffered was, you know, something that I'm definitely empathetic to.
Yeah.
So I'm not just trying to make it about color, but look at the demographics they were affecting, and look at, I mean, just historically through society, you know, the value that is placed on a person of color's life, whether it be pertaining to issues that are related to drugs, with the cocaine and crack disparities, or even in the issue of, you know, sexual assault, black victims versus white victims.
Why do society, why can't we, I mean, I just don't understand it. Like, we are important too.
Yeah, but again, if you go back historically, the wars of this nation, we went to war with ourselves over the issue of, you know, the value and commodity of a black life. So I don't see, like, I understand what you're saying, but I also see how it's very much the same right now as it is today back then, just in various different ways. So, I mean, the number one way to enslave a person, the number one thing that's synonymous with slavery is modern day prison. So if whatever you're doing, we can attach that with the prison sentence, then it's basically the same thing, just in a different model.
It's crazy because, you know, they took Uncle Bill's stuff all off. But yet, you know, y'all know the story about Charlie Sheen and whatnot. They still play his stuff, bruh. And I'm like, well, he didn't openly admit to doing stuff. Like, but he still have his TV time, air, and whatnot. They still play his stuff and whatnot. But they took off the Cosby Show and all the other stuff.
Right.
And I was like, man, this just don't, the way society, like, come on.
And let me tell you how crazy it gets. There are people that would not want what R. Kelly is doing or has done allegedly to his victims to happen to their own people. And I'm talking about black people. But because of the racial divide and disconnect, there are people that are still advocating for R. Kelly just because white people aren't being held accountable the same way. Which takes us completely off the focus of the victims and what the victims are going through.
Well, yes and no. Now, because you didn't see the special. So what it is that there's fans, right, who are overwhelmed with R. Kelly, right? And just like one of the young ladies that was on the show, you know, she said, I was his biggest fan. Anybody that said anything bad about him, you were cut off. Like, get out of my house. She was that deep, bro. Like, so it's just like, hey, if you're that infatuated, if you adore him, if you put him on a pedestal in this capacity, and, you know, or it really, let's call it what it is. So he's an idol, right? In your eyes. So you've idolized this person, and if anyone says anything about them, now you're up in arms and you're going to defend them when you don't even really know the first thing about this individual. Right. The only thing you know is that he's a musical genius, right? And yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, there are some artists, you know, men and or women, they end up becoming, you know, let's put it out there, sex symbols. You know, you hear all that, you know, when Usher first came out, you know, Usher, and, you know, when, you know, Bobby came out, and, Bobby, you know. So, you know, there are generational men and generational women, like even now Beyonce. A lot of the young boys, you know, are just like, oh, man, babe, you know, Cardi B, you know. So, you know, one of the things my mom always shared and told me is, she's like, you know, everything that look good ain't good. You know what I mean? So it's just like, yeah, you might, you know, have, you know, hips and you know, all the curves in the right place, but that don't necessarily mean that you right for me, because you might have that, but your attitude might suck.
Right.
You know, so that when we begin to look at these things, we know that there's going to be another star who comes, right, because they are good at what they do.
Right.
But, you know, Charles Barkley said it best, you know, I'm not your role model. And he took a lot of grief for that, you know, back in the I think it was the 90s. You know, he said, you know, I'm not your role model. So if he's being 100% transparent, and because he's not who people want him to be in their eyes, but you have someone telling you, you know, the 100, you know, as we say, you keep it at 100, you know, unadulterated, unfiltered truth, saying, listen, you don't know jack about me, you know.
you see me playing basketball, but you don't know who I am.
Right.
You don't have a close personal relationship with me.
Right.
So, you know, we have to, as people as a whole in society, just say, hey, you know what? This person musically, as far as their talent, they are gifted, man. I mean, boom, they got it. But I can't sit here and vouch for them because I don't know. I don't have a personal relationship with them. I don't spend any time with them, you know, off the stage or off the camera to, you know, to say what their character and or integrity is. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening. Even with the ones what you're speaking of is, you know, they put them on such a pedestal that they are so blinded and refuse to see what has transpired until they're in this ensnarement.
Right.
I posted something on, you know, one of my social media pages. It was probably a couple of years ago or so. Is that, you know, jailers and trappers have the best bait. They know what you want. They know what you need. They and once they dangle it in front of you, you know, once you jump at it, you know, we got you. It's too late to get out of this situation or circumstance now, because I already know what's going to entice you. So think about this. Think about this is R. Kelly, having perfected his craft, began to call himself the Pied Piper. Now, when I first heard that, I'm like, you know, red flag. Mm-hmm. Why are you calling yourself the Pied Piper? Because the Pied Piper lured kids into bad situations.
Right.
So you're calling yourself, and the wife touched on this, Dardy. You know, you're putting all your stuff out there through your music, but no one can tie it back to you because it's your art.
Right.
Right? And even with the song, you know, now, you know, he came out with, you know, I Admit It.
18-minute song.
19-minute song.
But he didn't admit anything in it. But you're right, he did start calling.
Well, he did. He just
read
didn't
between the lines, yeah.
He just didn't say, you know, I did it. So, you know, let's you know, just for a second, let's play about 30 seconds of this to kind of see, you know, what he says in this.
I admit I done made some mistakes, and I have some imperfect ways. I admit I helped so many people, and them same damn people turn fake. I admit it was so hard to focus. I didn't go to classes. I admit that I dropped out of school. I admit that I wasn't that cool. I admit I just feel like retiring. Admit I just don't feel like trying. But all my real niggas around me keep telling me, girls, fuck that, you gotta keep climbing.
Now, what was the first thing he was talking about? School.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You just touched on that. So he's going from the very beginning and walking you through this entire scenario that we all just talked about.
Right.
From dropping out of school to doing this to doing that and so on and so forth. So he's truly admitting to everything, but because it's in the form of a song, you can't use that under oath. It's an art.
An expression.
It's an expression. No, that's just a song I made, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so how can you take what, I mean, and it's just crazy, man. I mean, how can you take a 19-minute, it's like Usher's Confessions.
Right. Right. Part 1 and 2.
Right.
Come on, man. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, hey, you know, Usher came clean and like, yo, this what happened. You know, my bad. Yeah, I did it. And then now we get a completely different spin on this whole thing with a 19-minute song saying, I admit it.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, you know, as a society, where do we go?
That's tough. I mean,
What you think,
I think we make it. I think we really make it. We even as fans have made it difficult for him to even come to grips with some of the things that he's done.
That's true.
Because so many people have idolized him and put him on a pedestal. Again, like the talent that he possesses, We ain't gonna talk about his integrity right now, but the talent that he brings to his art form is second to none. I don't think anyone can argue that.
Right.
So because of that alone, like you said, there's people that they'll put you out their house. You start talking about R. Kelly, or they just want to discontinue the conversation wholeheartedly because you're coming up against someone that they idolize in their hearts. So I think we've created
a monster.
I don't want to say we created, but we definitely fed the monster that already existed.
Well, let's touch on what you're saying. We didn't create the monster.
Right.
The monster was created when he was a child.
Right.
What we did is enable it.
Right. We did. 'Cause
And we empowered him
right.
with our money.
That's true.
But by the time we recognized it, it was too late.
Oh, we recognized it we recognized it early on in his career when it first started happening. But he kept putting out hits, just like.
That's what I'm saying. It was too late.
You're right.
So in that respect,
we kept buying the music too, because
just like all the other parties involved, because nobody will touch on this. Like you said, we've enabled as fans. The parents bear responsibility. R. Kelly bears responsibility. The camp that he surrounded himself with bears responsibility. But nobody's talking about the fact that we as fans also bear a huge responsibility. From the moment that I think it may have been 5 or 6 years ago that I just completely, I think when he was doing his remixes and stuff with T-Pain, that's when I just fell off of R. Kelly completely as far as supporting the music. Because I had a personal conviction at that point. My oldest daughter, she hates hearing this. Hey, Destiny. She was made at TB2.com. You know what I'm saying? I was an avid fan of R. Kelly's music. But once it kind of hit me,
an avid fan. You in there making music.
Once it strung a personal chord that, okay, hey, all this stuff is coming out. Because I used to turn a blind eye to it too. Like, I don't really, I don't know what's going on. They don't know what's going on. Wasn't nobody in that bedroom. Okay, even if no one was in that bedroom, there's so many things that have surfaced to draw enough good judgment
to put the puzzle together.
That, hey, maybe I need to stop enabling this beast on my own personal, viewpoint financially. Maybe I don't need to buy no more R. Kelly albums or, promote anybody going to a concert or book signing or whatever the case may be. And I think that's a personal responsibility that I took as a fan of R. Kelly, that his fans don't want to hear nothing about that.
That's true.
So right, and as you were talking, some of the songs started coming back to my remembrance. It's just like Summer Bunnies.
You went way back.
Right.
Well, I mean, think about this. Summer Bunnies drive me crazy. So when I think about that, it's like, okay, so you think about summertime, especially with us being in, the Sunshine State. We don't wear, well, we do now, but, we didn't wear a whole lot of clothes back, then. And sometimes people don't wear a whole lot of clothes now. But, when you think of a summer bunny, you think of young ladies in the summer with Daisy Dukes, halter tops, so on and so forth, and it's, so he's a summer bunny's driving me crazy. Then, one of my favorite songs at that time was, You Remind Me of My Jeep. So it's just
that
like,
was my song too.
So I'm sitting here, and as all these things are coming out, I'm sitting here and I'm just like,
he didn't tell on himself so many times.
yeah, it's like, man, I think I might need to go take a shower now. You know what I mean? Because it's just like, you was talking about all these things you're doing to all these little girls. You know what I mean? And now, I'm thinking about, you thinking about, man, I made my daughter to you, dog. You know what I'm saying? So,
One of the things that really drew my attention to his self-proclaimed invincibility, I was in boot camp. This was 2002, the summer of 2002. And I believe this was just after the allegations came out with him urinating on a young girl. And he was still going through litigations. And someone in his camp, he had just released Ignition. Let me stick my key in your ignition. He had just released that. His camp was like, dude, I don't really think this is a song that, with everything that's going on right now, you need to be putting out.
But it got a hit.
He didn't care. He put it out, and it was a chop talker. a chart topic.
And the
excuse me.
remix.
So, and the remix. So it was like, again, we as fans gave him the tenacity to keep doing what he was doing, not just on the music scene, but whatever was helping create that music.
To feed and empower, you know, his extracurricular activities behind the curtain, and that's what we're talking about today. And it's crazy, you know.
He's putting out hits. His record, what record label? If you know, if this man putting out hits and making that money, come on. I'm not. Go ahead and put that song down. R. Kelly was putting out hits after hits after hits after hits after hits.
And then the other thing is, you know, if you think about the one thing that God gave us all, and I started thinking about this when you were talking about the Pied Piper, He gave us free will.
Mm-hmm.
So if you will allow yourself to be lured in by whatever vices it may be, then that is your free will, you know, and you succumb to whatever that was initially.
But is it really free will? Because think about this: if you're dealing with an adolescent, right, it's a young teen, or a soon-to-be adult, because he was looking at the demographics of 16, 17, to where they were close enough now to when they were 18, nobody can do anything, right? You're legal. So when you're legal, I got it, boom, right? So when we look at that, is it really free will, or is it I'm so overwhelmed by your aura or your status or your stardom? Because let's be 100% transparent. R. Kelly in our generation, had none of this occurred, would be put up there with Madonna, Michael Jackson, and Prince. Just based on the number of hits that he solely had and the number of records he sold, he would be up there. Right? But with all these things occurring, we can't deny his musical genius. But what it does is it kind of puts that asterisk, because now you've done all of these things and this whole entire puzzle starting to come together, and everybody can see what you're doing, and you're still sitting up here saying, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. He's not gonna.
Bill Cosby.
He's not gonna admit. Well,
He
he's
did
gonna
admit
to it, but he's not gonna. He's not gonna acknowledge that it's a problem. He don't.
Well, he can't acknowledge it's a problem now, because if he does, he's gone away for essentially ever.
I mean, again, the best illustration that I've seen to date is Bill Cosby. This man was one of the most financially lucrative actors almost ever. I mean, look at his image now. Look at what he has now. You know, this man, the one thing wealth can't replace is your health. His health is at the bottom of the barrel. Financially, they're trying to kill him, you know, and his freedom is gone. So that entire legacy that he had, like you said, R. Kelly would be enshrined as one of the greatest musicians all time. You know, like you said, up there with Madonna, up there with Michael Jackson. But what could he be reduced to?
So that, you know, they give titles. You know, Michael was the king of pop. And they say R. Kelly is the king of R&B.
You are not the king of R&B. I just want to put that out there. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you, now that everything is out there, do you think that he would still be the king of R&B? I mean, let's try to take away the man from the music. Okay.
If LeBron James, and this is a heavily vetted discussion in the sports world, if LeBron James was to get 6 rings, there are still going to be those that regard Michael Jordan as the best of all time. And that's just going to be personal preference. But with regard to R. Kelly and what he's accomplished talent-wise, you can't take that away. You can strip him of certain awards, but you can't take away the effect that he's had on generation after generation. You can't take away the millions of babies that have been created. You can't take away the memories. And that's one thing that ties us to this man so greatly is the memories. I can recall, I've been to 19 schools, being in the military and also being a military brat, I've lived in so many states and traveled a lot. But based off a song that is playing, I can pinpoint exactly where I was at, what I was experiencing during that time of my life, and it's the memories that are attached to the music that people don't want to let go. That happy, feel good feeling that you get, like that's what connects us to this man so intimately. So I don't think that he'll ever be pushed off the scene completely as far as his musical accomplishments. But yeah, this is, I mean, it already has tarnished so
That's
much
true.
as far as his legacy in music is concerned. But he'll forever, in my opinion, be regarded as a musical great because of his talent.
I'm glad. Go ahead, Dardy. Go ahead.
No, I was just finna piggyback off what Amori said. You were right. The memories to the music, you're like, bro, but this song, you know, TP2, that was my album, let me tell you guys.
Right.
I don't listen to R. Kelly now, and that's just for personal reasons. It's not even because of what's going on now. I know myself, and I cannot listen to R. Kelly.
Right.
So...
Because that 12 play, boy, I know that 12 play had a whole bunch of stuff attached to it.
Right, and I can't do it. I can't listen to R. Kelly. But you're so right with the memories. It's like, bruh, I know exactly where I was when the Nixon remix came out. Like, I remember going to parties with my friends and that song coming out, and we just having the best time.
Right.
Some of the best times. Like, I understand.
Because you grew up not too far from Chicago, right?
I'm from Gary, Indiana.
Yeah, so that's what, like
30 minutes.
30, 45 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah,
So think about this. So I'm gonna pose a question to both of you. Understanding what we know was going on around that time frame when he popped onto the scene, who was really there?
As
musically?
far as from an R&B standpoint, I mean, I think before him, Bobby Brown was the R&B man. No?
I mean, like, who was in that same...
coveted position of...
Who was in that same time span, so to speak? So we know Bobby was like 80s, 90s, right? Or really 80s. What was going on in the music world, so to speak, before? Who was running things, essentially, before R. Kelly really popped onto the scene?
As far as one specific artist?
Nobody.
now that you think about it, nobody.
Right, so, and this is why I'm bringing this up in relation to your Jordan reference. When we look at the NBA, and I'm not taking away from the accomplishments of Jordan, nor am I taking away the accomplishments from what R. Kelly has done. You know, what they've done, it will forever be impressioned in history as far as their talents. But when you look at what Jordan's coming into the league, Bird was getting old, Matthews getting old, Isaiah's getting old, the league is dying. Then here comes Jordan. So you have a perfect tsunami to say, here you go.
Mantle is being passed.
Right. Mantle's being passed. Spike Lee comes. He's boosting him up. You know, Air Jordan this. Nike takes him on. Persona blows up. Same tsunami for R. Kelly. Nobody's there. The torch essentially was there, but there was no one to take it. So that's why we cannot deny his musical genius, because he came and took the torch, so to speak, that Michael Jackson and Prince, and then Bobby, in essence, if we're putting Bobby in that same, you know, threshold, left. No one else was really doing it. So, I mean, R. Kelly came, and then shortly behind him, Usher and everyone else. But, you know, well, I don't think Chris got that far.
Chris is up there now.
I don't know.
Chris, he's up there. To me,
I don't know.
he's up there.
But it's a perfect tsunami. So, you know, the debate will always be had, Jordan, LeBron, right? But when you really look at it, it's hard to come against, you know, the era of, you know, his airness, so to speak, because there wasn't really anybody else available. I mean, Dominique, but Dominique
didn't have all the weapons and possessed the complete package.
Yeah, so I mean, you Jordan came at the right time, and it was a perfect tsunami. Same thing with R. Kelly. But you know, that being said, you can't take away from his accomplishments because his talent birthed that forth. Right. So as we're sitting here saying, you know, as we listen to music, you're just like,
Yeah, and which really comes back to the same thing that we were just talking about, the Pied Piper, because the Pied Piper used music, right? And he used it in a way that was to his advantage, which is why, to me, when he initially started calling himself the Pied Piper, you know, I'm just like, no, dude, something's just not right about this. And then you got all this child stuff going on, and then the allegations about Aaliyah and this and that. I'm just like, something ain't right in the coffee.
But then nobody even cared that he was calling himself that. Then nobody like, dude, why are you calling yourself?
And then if you just, I mean, even if you just look at the effects of music, you could take sports, for example. Everybody's not a Michael Jordan fan because everybody may not be into basketball. Football may be your thing. But one of the things that kind of resonates universally with human beings as a whole is music. And he, for all intents and purposes, had the key to the kingdom when it came to the music thing. So I would say his influence was probably even greater than a Michael Jordan as far as the amount of people that it touched.
So with everything that we've discussed here, what can we do as a society, as a culture, or demographic to begin to identify? Because I think, as you know, they were saying in the special, a lot of this was overlooked by the black community because of because of his stardom, so to speak. So how can we collectively, not only as a an African American community, but as a society as a whole, how can we begin to curtail a lot of these things and begin to really hold people's feet to the fire for their actions?
We can't really hold musicians or artists at like an
Well,
idle
we
state.
can because we're spending our money.
No, I'm saying like at an idle state.
Right. Okay.
We can't, if we know something, we can't be like, well, no, he didn't do it, because we don't know if he did it, if they did it or not. So if an allegation out there, we gotta do investigation and be like, we just can't throw it under the rug like we usually do.
The main thing that you just said there, and I was gonna say was, I wasn't gonna really say do an investigation, but I think that in our society, things become important to us when we're told by other societies that it's important.
Right.
So, for example, if R. Kelly would have been convicted years ago when he was brought on trial, I don't think that he would still have the same relevance that he has now. But because he wasn't, then to us, that says, hey, it ain't no biggie. Right. So we continue in the same vein that we continued in, as opposed to us taking the responsibility of our homes, of our families, and saying, look, this isn't right, that isn't right. We don't care what a court of law is going to say about this man. These are our values. These are the standards that we have for our home, for our family, for our generations to come, the things that we deem acceptable and unacceptable for this household or for this family line.
Right.
I don't think that was being done. So I think we would definitely have to take a more personal responsibility, starting first within our homes, because right now we have a lot of different elements that are raising our kids, are forming our thought processes, all this reality TV, all this trying to keep up with the Kardashians,
right.
Even down to just the music. If we look at the music that's prevalent right now in our society, it really, and this is the issue that I have, it tells our children it's okay to say what you want to say, how you want to say it. It's okay to use profanity all day, every day. As kids, we grew up cussing, but you better believe we weren't going to do it, not just in front of our parents, but in front of any other adult. But a lot of what I feel like our actions and directives are being formed by are the influences, the entertainment influences now that seem to be raising our families and imprinting our standards far more be it than the actual leadership or elders that we have in our homes and in our families.
Right.
I remember it used to be a time that your great auntie or your grandma would sit you down and really give you a history lesson on some things or talk to you about some things. that stuff almost seems non-existent, because now you even have those elders who they don't even want to confront their own lineage, let alone correct somebody else's child. So I think we've gotten away from that. We need to take more personal accountability and responsibility within the dynamic of our homes in order to effectuate a change that's gonna, kind of spill out into our culture and society as a whole.
Well, why do you think that most people don't want to take responsibility? I know in my family home, it was sweep everything on the rug so we don't have to deal with it.
Well, that's because it was the do as I say, not as I do. And if we sweep it under the rug, then we don't have to address it, which is also another issue and dynamic of why a lot of these kids are dealing with the things that they're dealing with, is because as opposed to having that transparent conversation and saying, hey, listen, this is what XYZ is. I was just sharing with one of my clients the other day. It's just like, hey, listen, you have to sit down and have that conversation with your kids. If your money isn't, up to where it needs to be for you to be doing all these things, you're stretching yourself too thin, and now you're stressing because you're trying to meet the needs of your kids, and these other areas are now beginning to fall apart, and you're gonna go down with the ship. So, these conversations, especially now, we're talking about that is especially with our demographic, is you're having those conversations when it relates to money. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that it's do as I say, not as I do. We have to begin to have these open dialogues, which is why, as we're doing even here today, and that's why the podcast is titled Just Say It. Because, in a lot of cases, we always try to put together these packages of words to make it sound or give it to someone the way that we want them to picture it, when really in all instances, people are people, and they're going to view it from their frame of reference. Right. And no matter how you present it to them. So even as we're talking and having this conversation now, people are going to hear what we're talking about, and they're going to say, yeah, you're right about some things, and then they're going to disagree about other things because they're viewing it from their own personal point of reference and or perspective. And you know what? That's okay. That's what makes us all people, because we all grew up differently. But, there are certain dynamics or intangibles that we all grew up with that we can relate to, which makes us, relatable to different people. So I can connect with you here, and I may disagree with you there. That doesn't mean that we have to be enemies. That just means we agree to disagree on some things and we agree on others. Right. But we have to allow people to be people, and we have to have these conversations with our children so that it cuts their learning curve. We always heard our parents tell us, we want you to be better than we were. Well, okay. Well, in order to do that, when I have questions, you have to be open and honest with me about those answers, because if I can't get those answers, then I might end up in an R. Kelly situation. You know what I'm saying? I might be R. Kelly, or I might be a victim. Or one of those ones in bondage by him. So. This is why those conversations have to be had. And, you touch on social media, it's the, when we think about the key word there, media. So when we think about media, it's an outlet reporting. But now it's on such a social or such a large or grandiose platform that it now becomes social media, so it's not everyone's own stage to say this or that, and even as Dar and myself were talking a little bit earlier this morning, it's don't put stuff out there on social media if you're not ready to be criticized about it. You know what I'm saying? And so even with us doing and having this conversation and dialogue, is there going to be backlash? Absolutely. Do I care? No. Because at the end of the day, we're having a healthy discussion about something that people need to hear about, as opposed to, as Dar just said, sweeping it under the rug and acting like it never happened and everything's going to be okay. Right. People, it's actually causes more damage when you sweep it under the rug and you don't address it, because now these things become suppressed and repressed, and now it becomes an issue when a person grows up, because of these questions that are within the depths of a person that aren't being answered. That plays out in their adulthood, so, we have to begin to have healthy dialogues, and, we're going to have them right here on this podcast. And, that being said,
were there any closing comments, anything that you guys can continue to encourage the people on as we move forward in addressing these things? We know that the Me Too movement is definitely helping a lot of young ladies and coming out and being able to have a platform to address what the things that have happened to them. But is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience today?
I would just encourage the audience, just parents, to just, like he said, talk to your kids about what happened to you when you were younger. Explain to them things, be transparent to them, so they can be like, oh, this is why certain things I go through. Now I know why I went through it, because your parents went through it. So if parents just begin to be open with their kids, half of the stuff will be better.
Okay. Piggybacking on what the both of you just said, as far as kind of sweeping things under the rug, I got a quick visual that, say for example, you have this rug, which is a piece of fabric, and you keep putting stuff up under it, keep putting stuff up under it. You have the notion that, at any point you can just lift the rug up, clean the stuff up, and then life just goes on. But in all actuality, the remnants of whatever that is under that rug begins to seep into the fabric of the rug now, and it's there. Now, in order to get that rug clean, it's going to take a lot more vigor, a lot more muscle behind it to get that stuff, to get that rug purified, so to speak. So one of the things that I'm kind of coming to as far as a conclusion is, I find it a pleasure to be able to partake in this podcast, and I feel like if there are more platforms like this, especially with technology advancing the way it is and having such an imprint on our younger generations and the youth, the more platforms that we come up with like this and being able to discuss and dialogue situational stuff such as this, the easier it'll be for your child or for a family member to be able to start getting some type of resolve or kind of know which direction to go into or how to go about strumming up that conversation with somebody they might need to have, or even just how to internally do the work themselves as far as self-management and protecting themselves and their kids and so on and so forth from whatever types of behaviors or discussions might later arise through these podcasts, So I'm just grateful for another platform that's created to kind of be able to get some of these issues out and discuss them.
Awesome. Well, I thank you both for joining me today. Before we leave, I know both of you are doing some individual efforts yourself. Dardy, you'll be launching your podcast. Well, it's already launched, but I'm going to let you share with the people, give them a little bit of information so that they can begin to follow and support you and what it is that you're doing. So if you can let the people know how they can get in contact with you and follow your new podcast.
Okay, so yeah, I just launched a podcast on the 12th of January. It's called 7. It's the Voice for the Voiceless. My first episode will be out in February. You can find me on Speaker. You can find me on SoundCloud, and it's under V.7.2019.
Is there an email address where the people can get a hold to you?
Yes, it's v.7.2019@gmail.com.
Awesome. And Mari, I know as you shared with some of the listeners and some of the audience today, we do thank you for your service in the military. With your outreach, I know that you do a lot of outreach to some of the homeless and some of the homeless veterans and supplying them some of the things that they're needing. For maybe the winter, whether it's blankets and things of that nature. So is there a way that the people can get a hold of you if they're wanting to assist you with your efforts? Okay, right now I don't have too many handles to throw out. You can pretty much contact me on Facebook right now at this point. All you have to do is search my name, Amori, Amori, last name Newell, Newell. What's your Instagram, man? Everybody's on the gram. Instagram is Powered for Purpose. There we go. And I'll have some additional things I'll be rolling out later on with some initiatives that God is kind of placing on my heart. So, yeah. All right, everyone. Well, we thank you for joining us on this edition of the Just Say It podcast. We're wrapping things up again. I'd like to thank my two guests for taking the time out to joined us in breaking down this R. Kelly situation. Dardy, I appreciate you. Amori, I appreciate you. Until the next time, we just ask you to have those open dialogues, those open discussions with your children. Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much going on within our communities and our demographics that we don't talk about, that it's time for us to begin to have those conversations. So again, until the next time, keep it real, be easy. Whatever it is, you don't have to piece together the perfect words to get your point across. Just say it. You want to say bye, Dar?
Bye.
Deuces.
I think the people are really going to enjoy this. But until the next time, when we come around on episode 2 of the Just Say It podcast, be real. And until then, we're going to shut it down. Good job, everybody. We went in for about an hour and a half.
What about quick? I'm trying to text my.
I got my wrong thing, y'all. It's
Really?
VII dot